Welcome back to Midwest Native Skills Thursday evening live streaming. I'm Tom Laskowski with Midwest Native Skills, and for you, anyone new on there, thanks for joining us. Today's topic is going to be family backyard camping. How to go camping in your backyard, have a lot of fun, and not spend a lot of money. Before I get started with that, for anybody new out there, just real briefly, I just wanted to give a brief overview of who we are. We're a outdoor survival school. We teach non-military survival. As I always say, we love our military, but they tend to teach survival with equipment. We tend to do just the opposite. We teach survival with little or no equipment at all. We just use what nature provides out there. Just got off of a 6-day survival class. It was very successful. We had great weather, and everybody learned how to survive most anywhere in the U.S. with just what nature has. So that's who we are. Every other Thursday we come on here with different topics. And like I said, today is family backyard camping. And if you have any ideas, because I'm sure many of you have been camping out there, please text a note to us, and I'd like to include them in the broadcast for people that look at this after we're off the air. Okay, well, why would you want to do some backyard camping? Well, simply, it's convenient. You have all the conveniences of home. If you have young children, they still have the security of being in their own home, yet you're going to introduce them to the outdoors. And that's what we want to do. We want to try to dispel any fears that, the animals are going to get them out there, or there's bad stuff out there. So this would be a good first step. Like I said, we're going to try to do it low dollar and just give you some ideas. So, with that said, if you do want to buy a tent, say you want to get into camping, I would go to a Walmart, just buy a tent. It depends how many people are camping. They rate a tent as a 2-man tent, that's really enough for one person. A 3-man tent, in my opinion, is going to give 2 people nice, comfortable rooms. So I always add 1 person to the amount of people I'm going to have in a tent. I would suggest not spending a whole lot of money. Because the quality of the inexpensive tents lately are pretty good. And if you spend $50 on a tent, maybe $60, $75, that should be plenty, depending on the size of the tent. You can get them online. REI is a good place. I'm sure there's a lot. Most of the tents have an outside pole structure. So that's nice because you can just put the poles in and it forms an X, and the tent just clips to that X, and you can move the tent wherever you want just by picking it up and moving it to another location. One tip about putting tents up, this is for your backyard or anywhere. Everyone wants to put a ground cloth on the ground and put their tent on top of it. I don't recommend that. I'd rather put that ground cloth inside the tent. Then I take the edges and fold them up around me, kind of forming a little bathtub. So no matter how hard it rains, I'll always be dry, even if there's a little river running past my tent. If you put it on the ground and you have that tarp extend beyond the footprint of your tent, what you've made is a good water collector. So that water will come down, hit your tarp, run to the lowest point, which is where you're sleeping, and you're going to get wet. Most people are worried about protecting the bottom of their tent. That's why they put the ground pad down. Well, first of all, if you're picking a location, you want to make sure there's no sticks and rocks, because you don't want to be sleeping on a stick or a rock. So the ground should be relatively flat anyway. So tearing the bottom of a tent, I've been doing this a while, and I can't recall of ever seeing the bottom of a tent rip. So to stay dry, put that ground cloth inside the tent, and you'll be dry and comfortable, even if it does rain out there. Now, as an alternative to a tent, if you don't want to even spend that money, you could just use a tarp. A 10 by 10 tarp would be plenty big. You can, if you have trees in your yard, string it up between two trees. And then just, most tarps have grommets or tie-outs on the end. Just tie it up, slant it down, and make what they call a lean-to shelter. Don't have trees in your yard, tie it to a clothes pole. Tie it to, if you have a garage building in the back, just to get that line across there, and tie your tarp to it, and put it at about a 45-degree angle so you have plenty of room under there so you can sleep down there. There is a big mental difference between sleeping in a tent and sleeping in a tarp. If you sleep under a tarp, even though you have something over your head, you're going to feel vulnerable. That only really happens the first time you camp out, and people usually quickly get over that. But just keep that in mind for yourself as well as for your kids. But if you're in your backyard and you have a tarp and you just start out that way, your kids probably won't even notice, and they'll just think that's the way to camp. But if you have been in a tent and been tent camping most of your life and you graduate to a tarp, don't be surprised if the first time you're going to feel a little out in the open, exposed, even though you're under a tarp. People are worried about mosquitoes in a tarp because you don't have any mosquito netting. Very typically, mosquitoes go away after the sun goes down. So, and if you have a fire there, the yellow color of the fire drive away mosquitoes, as does the smoke. So, mosquitoes usually aren't a problem after dark. Also, you can wear long sleeve shirts if you have a thin long sleeve shirt. That'll help give you some protection from mosquitoes. That should be a minor problem for you. Sleeping on the ground. You want to try, and this goes for a survival situation, this goes for camping, this goes for almost anything. You never want to sleep directly on the ground. If you remember from physics, heat goes from a warm body to a cold body. Well, your body's 98.6. On average, the Earth is 54 degrees. So what happens is your body tries to warm the Earth all night, and you wake up tired. Tired, sore, stiff. Not because the ground's hard, but because you've been working all night. You want to get up off the ground. A good way to do that, again, we're talking about backyard camping now, not in a survival situation. If you happen to have ground pads for camping, some of the brand names are called Ridge Rest. It's a closed cell foam that they fold up, and they're probably about this thick, and that's going to insulate you from that ground. If you like the kind that roll up, Thermarest is a fantastic brand. Again, we're getting a little more pricey here, so you have to make sure you like camping for this. Air mattresses do not work. Think about an air mattress. It's just one big enclosure with air in there, and what insulates you from the ground is dead airspace that's not moving. Well, if you have an air mattress, that air in that air mattress can form little convection currents down there and pick up heat from your body and keep going around in there. So that's not dead airspace, that's moving air. So air mattresses do not work. But closed cell foam, that's the denser foam, works fine. And again, low dollar, we're trying to keep it. You can put blankets down. When you lay on it, you're kind of crushing all the dead airspace, but for temporarily till you decide if camping is really what you like, you can put down maybe 1 or 2 blankets, fold them double or even triple, to try to get some dead airspace between you and the ground. But whatever you do, don't sleep directly on the ground. Sleeping bags, if you have sleeping bags, great. If not, blankets work fine. So if you're going to sleep in your socks, make sure they're a clean, fresh pair of socks, not the socks you wore all day. The socks you wore all day are damp. All of our socks get damp during the day. They estimate that people sweat about a pint of water a day out of their feet. So if you're going to go to bed out there, make sure you have a pair of socks to change into, and then your feet will be warm, and you'll be warm all night. So that's just some ideas about tent versus tarp. Now you can build a shelter. You might have a house that has a little bit of woods in the back, some trees. Easiest type, again, would be to just imitate that lean-to shelter. Get a log, put it between two trees across, and then make your roof, some logs going down. And then again, if you have a tarp, make it easy on yourself. Just put that as the roof. You can make a little awning on the front if you want to make it a little homey. You can improvise. But building a shelter, your kids are going to love it. There's other types. There's debris huts and other shelters. But again, this is basically for someone just starting out. We want to do it low dollar, so you can build yourself a shelter. You can talk about loss proofing. We gave a segment on loss proofing. What to do if you get lost. Find that tree, sit down. Okay, we have our sacred order. Sacred order, number 1 is shelter. Number 2 is fire. Number 3 is water. And last is food. You can do that life plan, formulate a plan, LIFE, logically assess your situation. Tell your kids, okay, let's pretend we're lost. What would you do? Logically, and you could use the terms that they understand. Assess the situation. Inventory what you have. Hey, let's see what's in our pockets. What do we bring along? Okay, let's get a plan. What are we going to do? And if you go through this, if, again, ever in the future they do get lost, some of this might stick with them and you'll give them a little bit of an advantage. I'd like to try to make this into a learning experience as well as a fun experience. So we'll be throwing some other things in there. A few other things, you can talk about signaling for help. And just to bring you up to speed on that, 2 of the best ways, if you want to draw attention to yourself, at night, build a big fire. During the day, a smoky fire. Those are the 2 easiest. A whistle, you can always say, you always have a whistle with you, and it wouldn't be bad on this camping trip to take a whistle with you, just so they get in the habit of knowing, going camping, I always have my whistle with me. And tell them, okay, 3 toots on this whistle in 3 consecutive sets means I need help. And tell them, we never do this just to play around. This is for a real serious situation where you actually need help. So those are just some things to impart on them, on signaling. You can talk about finding water. If you have water there, and then naturally you say, well, if you're going to have a fire, and this is depending on their age, just to be safe, you should boil it first. If you don't have a fire and it's been 2 days since you had water already, then you depending on their age, then you're going to have to tell them, well, go ahead and drink it. But you always want to purify it. Now before it gets dark, one other thing, make leaf rubbings. I'm sure you all did that when you were a kid. Just get a leaf, piece of paper, put another piece of paper over, get a pencil. And this way, when they're making the leaf rubbings, you can look at the leaves and say, okay, what kind of tree did this come from? Okay, this is a maple. This is an oak. Let's see if we can tell the difference between a red oak and a white oak. Well, a red oak has points on the leaves, and a white oak has rounded lobes on the leaves. You can remember that because with the oaks now, the red men fought their wars with arrows, and they have points on the arrows. The white man fought his wars with bullets, and the tip of the bullets are rounded. So the red oak have points on the end of the needles of the leaves. The white oak have rounded lobes. So that's a little tricks you can use to tell the difference between a red oak and a white oak tree. But making leaf rubbings, and also, it depends, if you have their attention on this, just simply trace or draw the leaf. Then they'll remember what kind of tree it's from. And again, it depends how far you want to get into this. You could even go, okay, this is a red oak. If you ever have a stomach problem like diarrhea, you can put this in water and drink the water and it'll help your stomach problem. So, different things like Practice not being afraid of the dark. That's just a simple matter of getting them out there and making them comfortable, walking around. They're going to mimic what they see you doing, especially the younger kids. So if you act very comfortable, they're going to be more comfortable. In this kind of setting, I would avoid telling scary stories. Again, we're trying to get people over a fear of the dark. We're introducing them to a new situation camping. There's a lot of new things going on. It's going to be dark outside. So spooky stories wouldn't be appropriate, in my opinion, for this camp out. When they get older, that's a different story. Campfire. No campouts. Camp out without a campfire. Okay. Depending on your local regulations, in a lot of suburbs, campfires are not allowed unless you're cooking food on them. You might want to check with your city hall on that, but I know that's the rule where we live in the suburb of Cleveland. So as long as you have food out there, you can have a small campfire. So make sure you have food out there, which I'm sure you will anyway. A couple ways to make a campfire. If you want to dig out a small depression in the ground, make sure it's not too deep. No deeper than about 4 inches. If you dig it deeper than that, you're going to choke it from air, and you're going to have a hard time keeping it going. If you want to put a ring of rocks around it, looks nice. Make sure you leave about an inch gap between the rocks. Again, let that air in. That's the main reason fires go out. People starve them of air. So we want to get that oxygen to that fire. If you do this in your yard, you can just take a shovel, take the dirt out, spade it up, and put it aside, and then when you cover the hole tomorrow, when your camp out's over, you can put that dirt back, water it good, and that grass will just take right back. Never knew there was a campfire there. Biggest thing about campfires is people try to start with too big of a piece of wood. You want well, even pinky size to start a fire. That's getting a little big. So what you might want to do is break that into even smaller pieces, lengthwise. Honestly, try toothpick size to start, and maybe a good handful, and build up from there. Now, if you have a campfire, there's nothing to say that if you're going to be cooking on this, cooking on hot coals, wood hot coals, that's what we do all the time. But again, we want to stack the deck in your favor for this camp out. We want to have a good fire for camping. There's nothing saying you can't get a few, if you have part of a bag of charcoal, you can put it in your campfire, and so you can have a real nice bed of coals for camping out. Again, this is not survival. This is providing your kids and yourself with an easy, good camping experience right in your backyard. So if we can stack the deck, nothing wrong with using charcoal in that situation. If for some reason you don't have trees, wood's hard to get, there's nothing wrong with getting out those little hibachis and use that as your campfire. It works just as great. You're going to have a fire, and again, you can start that with wood or even with your charcoal. Some food you can cook on the hot coals, and you have to remember, flames boil water, coals cook food. So if you want to boil water, you want flames. But now we're going to be cooking, so we want to wait till that fire dies down until we have red hot coals. One thing you can do is you have your hot dog on the very, put your hot dog on your stick. Let's see what I have here. Okay. This is your hot dog. This is your stick. You would put it on this way. Then on the end of this, you would take a knife and cut it down the center and make a cross. And cut it, probably this far down. And then cook it over the fire. What's going to happen is the hot dog is going to curl down as it cooks. And when it's pretty well cooked, what you do, take the hot dog off, turn it around, put it on the other way, take your knife and do the same thing to the other side. A cut here, down, maybe 2-3 inches, and a cut crosswise 2 or 3 inches, and cook the rest of the way. Now these 4 little pieces are going to curl down, and it's going to look like a spider. So you can call that your spider hot dog. Kids are going to love it. Just a fun way to eat a hot dog. It's probably not meant to be eaten in a bun, but eating a hot dog in the hand for a camping trip, nothing's better. A few more things you can do. If you have an apple, just if you have an apple core or a knife, you want to take the core out, get some a brown sugar, pack it in the center where the core was, and get some aluminum foil, wrap it around, put it in the hot coals, probably 4 or 5 minutes, and then turn it. Total time should be probably around 10 minutes, depending how hot the coals are. Then get it out of the coals, let it cool, and you're going to have a great apple pie dessert. It tastes pretty good. You can also do something similar with onions. You take a sweet onion, you have your onion, slice it in eighths, not all the way through, and right in the center put a big glob of butter. Put it in foil, wrap it up, make sure it's nice and tight, put it in your fire. Keep it in there at least 10 minutes, again, depending how hot your coals are, probably no more than 15 minutes. And what's going to happen is the onion's going to cook in the butter, and that onion's going to taste very sweet when you open that up. And it's going to be translucent and sweet, and it tastes pretty good. So those are a few little things you could do with food. And of course, you know, s'mores and all that. One trick you can try with s'mores, for those of you that don't know, it's a graham cracker and marshmallow and a Hershey bar, and you put another graham cracker and make a sandwich on it. If you don't want to use the Hershey bar, you can try cake frosting. Some people like that better. Some people like the Hershey bars. So whatever you like, just a little different twist on an old theme. Okay, I said try to stay away from spooky stories, but everybody likes a story. Now, there's going to be the stars out there, so we're going to talk about the stars in a second. But if you go on the web, there's a website, www.firstpeople.us, and we're going to put that up. That's Native American stories from First Nation people, Native American, and that's how the Native Americans passed down their heritage, with stories. And they have stories, creation stories. One of the pretty cool stories that you might want to print out and read at your camp out there is the Wasco legend entitled Coyote Places the Stars. So if you go to that website, again, www.firstpeople.us, on that page, go over to the right-hand side, and it'll say Other Legends, and there'll be a listing of tribes. Go to the last one. It'll be Wabanaki-Zuni. That's W through Z. And that's just page down to Wasco, W-A-S-C-O, and you'll see the title, Coyote Places the Stars. And you can print that out and take that out to your camp out. You can also peruse down the entire list from all the different tribes across the country. And if some a story suits your fancy or makes a point that you'd like to make to your kids, print it out. Candle lanterns. Candle lanterns are great. What they are, basically, you're going to take a little votive candle, and you're going to take a pop can and make it like this. So what you're going to do to make this, I have these mini pop cans. You can use any size can you want. To make this, a knife or an X-Acto knife, you're going to slice down the length here. So I'm going to do that. The aluminum's pretty thin, so you have that cut there. Now we're simply going to make the doors. We're going to cut this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. And that's going to make the doors like this. You can use scissors to cut if you can get in there. I'm just going to use my X-Acto knife. Now, this is something you're probably going to want to do because you don't want to slip naturally. that on the bottom. And I'm going to make 2 cuts across the top here. And there you have the cuts, and then simply open this up, fold it back, and there's your candle lantern. So now we're going to have, now to hold this down, this is, the bottom's usually rounded here, so you're going to want to put some sand or some dirt in here. That's going to do 2 things. One, it'll weight this down so the wind doesn't knock it over. And second, it's going to give you a flat surface to put your votive candle on it. Put your votive candle in there and make a few of these around your camp, and you have yourself little candle lanterns. And you'll be surprised, you can close these down and almost direct the light like a mini flashlight, and gives a fair amount of light. If you want to use a taper candle in this, that's not very hard to do. In the bottom, you would again take your X-Acto knife and just make a big X in the bottom here, and push that up, and you could push a taper candle up through there, and you could hold the taper candle, and you can walk around with, you'd be holding the taper candle like this, and you'd be walking around with your flashlight. When it burnt down a ways, you just keep feeding it up. So, candle lantern out of an aluminum pop can. Kids will like it. Make 3, 4 of these around your campsite. You'll have some nice atmosphere, something they made. Here's something good you can do, teaching your kids compass and map skills. Why not do this while there's still light outside? But you make a treasure map of your backyard, and you go to different locations. Now you can need a compass for this, and that means you should know how to use a compass and take a bearing. Maybe we'll have one of our Thursdays on how to take bearings and all that. Might not be a bad topic. But if you're familiar with how to use a map and compass, you can have like 3 legs of it, and they go from point A to point B, and then take a new bearing, and they're using their compass, and again, you're teaching them compass skills. But now we need to find some way to measure distance. You have to tell them how far to walk in that direction. The way I teach it in our survival classes, I just use pacing and use your steps, their steps, to count off. So I'll do, you can do, okay, let's walk 10 feet. Find out how many steps it takes them to walk 10 feet. So if you say, okay, now if you wanted to go 20 feet, how many steps would that be? I mean, actually, it would be double. If you want to go 5 times that, or 50 feet, have some math. 5 times that distance, 5 times your number of steps. Have them step off, so you can teach them a little math there. Depends their age. You can even go, okay, what if you had to go 25 feet? That means twice, and then I got to cut my steps in half. Like I said, teach them a little math, and make it a little treasure hunt. And at the end, have something there. Maybe their dinner's there, or maybe that's where the hot dogs are, or maybe that's what the dessert is, the apples. But, you know, usually have some consequences. If there's no consequences, people don't put in the effort. So if you have some consequences or something they want at the end of the trail or end of the path, they'll probably find it a little more exciting. Now, when it gets dark, naturally we're going to have the stars up there. There's a lot you can do with the stars. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about navigation. Everyone wants to know about nighttime navigation. And really, there's only one thing you can count on for nighttime navigation, and that's finding the North Star, and which will tell you where north is, because everything else in the sky moves. And you can't really navigate with things that aren't stationary. So, with that said, probably most of you are familiar with the Big Dipper. It's part of the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Actually, the Big Dipper is called an asterism, if you want to know the technical term. That's a group of stars that we all know that are familiar to all of us. So the Big Dipper is an asterism. It's a group of stars. And the 2 pointer stars point to the North Star. Again, it's not the brightest star in the sky. In fact, it's magnitude 0, meaning 0 is in between. Dimmer than that is negative, brighter than that is positive. So it's about right dead center in the middle. And a lot of people mistakenly think it's the brightest, and it is not. So if you can get them to find the Big Dipper, locate the Big Dipper, show them where the 2 bottom pointers are, and if you just look up Big Dipper on Google or whatever your search engine is, there'll be quite a bit of information just to have you brush up on it so you know where it is and what to talk about. By the way, if you find the Big Dipper and then you can find the North Star, keep going straight, because on the exact other side of the North Star is going to be a big W. That's Cassiopeia, the Queen. So the Big Dipper and Cassiopeia are always 180 degrees apart. So right there, you know, a constellation. Cassiopeia is a constellation. Big Dipper is an asterism, part of a constellation, the Great Bear. And also in the summer sky, there's something pretty obvious. It's called the summer triangle. It'll be rising in the east. You'll be up probably around 10 o'clock, I'm assuming. It'll get dark by then, maybe 10:30. So just look toward the east, and you're going to see bright stars. Or you can just look up on the web if you're not familiar with these stars. The 3 bright stars are Deneb, Altair, and Vega. And they're part of 3 constellations. Deneb is the swan, Altair is the eagle, and Vega is the harp. So they form a big triangle, and that's known as the summer triangle. So if you want to point those out to your kids, now at least they know some things in the sky that they can look at. There's some apps for your phone you can download. These are a great help. Kind of ticked me off. I spent about 10 years studying star charts so I could teach stars in my classes, and about when I was comfortable and found out, they came out with these apps where all you do is you hold your phone up to the sky. It shows you exactly what you're looking at, gives you the name of the stars, gives you the distance, gives you all the information about it. Good apps. One is Heavens Above. Wendy just told me about Star Walk today, and I looked. It's a pretty nice application. I'm familiar with Heavens Above, and I believe both will give you satellite overpasses. So we can see satellites. Usually it's within the first hour and a half after sunset, because all we're seeing from the satellite is reflected light from the sun. So the sun bouncing off that satellite and coming down to our eyes. You can tell a satellite from an airplane. One, satellites are going to be a constant brightness. There'll be no blinking, no red and green blinking, because the satellites have no lights on them. All we're seeing is that reflective light. The satellites will be moving a lot faster than an airplane. But it will take them, I'd say 1.5 minutes to go from one horizon to the other, maybe 2 minutes. The satellites typically are flying about 17,500 miles an hour. That's the speed you need to stay in orbit. And a lot of these will have when the International Space Station will fly over, and that's flying at 250 miles up. So, but most things are clipping up there at about 17,500 miles an hour. If you see some of these satellites going in a north-south direction, they're typically communication satellites. If you see them just going at different angles, it's probably not a satellite, it's probably space junk, like the third stage of a rocket that either the US, China, or Russia put up there. And there's an awful lot of space junk up there. So if anybody else has any ideas, I'd be happy to hear from them. But those are just some basic ideas. Now, if you're really interested in camping and you're still want to go one more step other than your backyard, we are having a Camping Basics 101 class. That's going to be July 25th and 26th, held at a Girl Scout camp just south of Cleveland. It will be a camp out. So again, you can use a tarp, or you can buy an inexpensive tent. We're going to go over the real basics. How to build a campfire, how to maintain that campfire, how to build a fire in the rain if you have to, how to cook over an open fire, how to tie some basic knots. This is for people that may be first-time campers or maybe first or second-time campers. Just want to get reintroduced or become familiar with it. So it'll be a Saturday. Get there about 10 o'clock. It'll be over on a Sunday around 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's on our website. Other classes coming up, we have our edible and medicinal plant class, our summer class. That'll be July 18th. And I just added another one on July 19th. So July 18th is a Saturday. We have a couple of spots open there. And I'll be putting up one for July 19th, which is a Sunday. And that's from 9 to 4. And we're going to be going over all the summer plants, medicinal, edible, what to do with them, how to identify them. And then we do have, if you want to get even more into more primitive wilderness survival, want to know how to survive most anywhere, we do have our weekend survival class. That's July 31st through August 1st. So that's a Friday evening to a Sunday. And that's where we go over basically everything from knife sharpening to how to rub 2 sticks together to make fire to making some primitive traps. And have a good time in the meantime doing it. Other than that, that's about all the information I have on family camping. Have fun. And like I said, you always have the comforts of home, so camping in the backyard isn't a bad idea. So with that, if you have any questions, you can always drop me a line at tom@survivalschool.com. That's my email. Or give us a call. We have a toll-free number, 888-886-5592. And like I said, if you're interested in learning camping basics, July 25th to 26th. If you just want to know edible medicinal plants, that's July 18th or 19th. Or if you want to become a survival person and want to know more about it, we have that weekend class on July 31st or August 1st. So thanks for joining us, and have fun camping in your backyard.